In this video, I'm going to walk through some tips for taking better business portraits, what to consider before you start shooting, lens choice, backgrounds, lighting, camera settings, and how to get the best from your subject. Over the years as a commercial photographer, I've shot thousands of business portraits, from small local business owners to CEOs in Hong Kong, bankers in Switzerland, and I've even spent a week shooting an entire skyscraper of business people in London. Speed and efficiency are key to ensuring a successful shoot, but there's far more to consider than just that. In our portrait section on Karl Taylor Education, you'll find a number of business portrait photography classes, along with a very important class on business portrait theory. But here I've outlined some of the key elements to give you a good start to successfully tackling a business shot. Now, at first glance, it may seem pretty obvious what a business portrait is. They are sometimes for a company website, a brochure, an annual report, or for a newspaper or magazine article. And of course, they feature an individual. But it's important to remember that the images represent the company, not the individual. And the sooner you realise this and concentrate on the requirements of the company as well as the individual, then the more successful you will be. For example, nearly everyone hates having their photo taken, and 7 out of 10 people will probably dislike seeing their own photo unless they're a supermodel. That's normal. It doesn't mean it's a bad photo, it's just something people dislike, like going to the dentist. The point is, you're not generally shooting it for the benefit of the individual, you're shooting it for the benefit of the company. And if they, or their marketing team, like it and it meets expectations, then that's what counts. Of course, you must do all you can to satisfy the individual, but remember they will not always be the decision maker. So find out what the company needs and don't pander to requests for, "I think I'll be better if I'm here," or "I prefer to stand like this," if that's not what the person booking the job requested. Depending on the company that booked you, they may have a very rigid structure and image guidelines that they want you to follow, or they may have hired you for your creative input. Be clear on the expectations and what's required before the shoot. Before you start shooting, when taking business portraits, it is essential to understand and remember the purpose of the images. The most important thing to remember when taking business portraits is that your client will want your subject to appear confident and approachable. That's easy in theory, but not everyone feels confident having their photo taken. Companies don't want grinning Cheshire cats, and they don't want grumpy, unapproachable looking staff either, because it's not good for business. Fortunately, there are a few things you can do that will help your subject appear more confident. The first thing is adjusting their posture. By getting your client to stand up straighter, they automatically appear more confident. A better posture also helps people appear more alert and slimmer and helps smooth out any wrinkles in their clothing. Now, as the photographer, you have to be confident too. Your confidence will transfer to your subject and help put them at ease. When I greet my subjects, I immediately talk them through what's going to happen. I explain the process, what I'm going to be doing, and why I'm going to be asking them to do it. By explaining all of this to them, they feel less awkward and realise that you're in control. Maintain that control politely or with a sense of humour. When it comes to posing, again, it's important to remember why you're taking these pictures. The subject should look relaxed, yet confident and approachable. For male subjects, I ask them to put their hands in their pockets. This helps them adopt a more relaxed pose and also helps the shoulders to sit better. For female subjects, I generally get them to hold their hands in front of them. It's also usual to turn your subjects at a 45-degree angle to the camera. This slims the body and looks less confrontational. Also, don't shoot from too low down or from too high up. Just slightly from above eye level is a good shooting position on a standing shot, but you can shoot from above if they're seated at a desk as part of the shot. Lens choice. Lens choice is an important factor when it comes to portrait photography, and business portraits are no different. This Lens Choices for Studio Work video, which forms part of our portrait course, is a great example of the effects of different lenses and explains how to choose the right lens for your portrait photography. The last thing you want is a lens that will distort your subject and make them look nothing like they do in real life. Your focal length should also place you the right distance from your subject. If you're using a 20mm lens, it goes without saying that you'll be too close and you'll have distortion. On the other hand, a 200mm lens will place you too far away and your subject will feel disconnected from the viewer. Also, if your focal length is too long, the perspective will appear too flat and the subject will look chunky. My go-to lens for business portraits is my 100mm lens on a medium format camera, which is the equivalent of around 85mm on a 35mm full frame camera. But you can make good business portraits with anywhere from between 50mm and 100mm in the 35mm full frame format, or slightly wider if you're doing an environmental portrait where you need to include more of the surroundings. Background. Now, talking of surroundings, the background is an essential element for a business portrait, but unfortunately it's often overlooked. Backgrounds for business portraits should be fairly neutral. They shouldn't be distracting. If it's a busy background, then it should be decluttered and depth of field reduced. For studio style portraits, I often go for a neutral grey background with a gradient light, unless the client specifically requests otherwise. Paper backgrounds, although a common choice, tend to warp over time and you'll start to see small ripples appearing. So store paper backgrounds carefully. Vertically is better to avoid the ripples, which can become very obvious in your photograph, which means you'll have additional retouching work to do. You can avoid this by using a solid background wherever possible, or vinyl or stretched backgrounds. If you're shooting part of the location as the background, then never be afraid to declutter the background and move things as necessary. You can always put them back when you're finished. Lighting for business portraits. Throughout my photography courses, whether it be fashion or product shoots, you'll often see me starting with my background light and then working forwards one light at a time, testing each light individually. And it's far easier to do this if you have an assistant. In fact, if you want to make a career from business portraits, having an assistant is a real asset. They can help you carry and set up all that kit from location to location. And they can pose for you as a test shot while you perfect your lighting and save wasting your client's time. I've used a number of different modifiers for business portraits depending on the mood that the client wants to convey. The most common and flattering setup is a large softbox or diffusion. This works especially well with older people with more wrinkles, as it smooths out the skin and creates less texture. Place them slightly above your subject and angle them down. Light always looks more natural coming from above. And put it as close to your subject as you can to get the softest light possible. For a more dramatic setup, I'll use a silver brolly, beauty dishes, or my favourite, the Para 133. This parabolic reflector is a more aggressive lighting setup, and although it isn't always the most flattering light on older people, it does create a lovely catch light in the eyes, and a slight shadow on the edge of the face has a slimming effect. The Para also creates much more three-dimensionality. If you want a softer light, you could switch this out for a 150 octabox from above, or even a 170 white umbrella. I've got lots and lots of different lighting setups on my platform, as well as the comparisons on lots of different modifiers. Recommended camera settings for business portraits. Once you've set your lighting, you're ready to start photographing. For this, camera settings are fairly standard. Your shutter speed should be at its fastest flash sync speed if you want to reduce ambient light pollution, which for 35mm format cameras is usually around 1/250th of a second. Remember, you can also cut out ambient light pollution by switching off their office lights if necessary. Of course, if you intend to bring natural light or ambient light into the mix, then you'll need to reduce the shutter speed accordingly. Take a test shot with and without flash though, so you know what's going on with both of the ambient light and the flash at different settings. For many business shoots, I shoot at f11 on a medium format camera, which is about f8 on a 35mm camera. That ensures the whole face is sharp, but sometimes you may want to open up to f5.6 or more for creative reasons, or simply to reduce distracting backgrounds. Again, it's important to remember why you're taking these images and understand the client's requirements in advance. Often you can simply show a client other business portraits to get an idea from them the direction they'd like you to go. As always, there is no universal camera setting, there is only the camera settings that are best for the scenario you're faced with. Retouching business portraits. Retouching is almost the final step of a business portrait shoot, and I rarely deliver business portraits without at least minimal retouching. Subjects might have a hair out of place, a pimple, etc., and it's better to clean those shots up before you deliver them to the client. I don't often remove permanent features such as moles or scars unless the subject specifically asks for it. Simply correct things such as stray hairs, wrinkled clothing, or non-permanent skin blemishes is all that's needed. They don't need to be a full beauty style retouch. Creases or misshapen clothes is actually often the biggest problem, so take the time to get people to straighten their clothing or stand or sit appropriately and tug the clothing into place if necessary. If that fails, I have a great course on how to remove creases and fix clothing so that it looks natural on Karl Taylor Education. Delivery of the images. Clients don't often need huge files, so I usually deliver 4,000 pixel TIFF images and 2,500 pixel JPEGs for every shoot. That way they have them suitable for most print and web use. I keep the higher resolution images backed up in case they need them in the future. If you're worried about them paying on time, you can deliver watermarked JPEGs and insist on payment before you transfer the final files. And I don't often give clients a choice. They can choose their favourite during the shoot if necessary, but due to the retouching requirements, I would only deliver one image per subject based on that choice. Otherwise, you'll spend too much time on the post-production and the job wouldn't be profitable. Well, I hope you found this useful. If you'd like to learn some important aspects on business portrait lighting and business portrait theory, then head over to Karl Taylor Education. Thanks for watching. Get my completely free photography course with no sign-up required. You can also access our free 90-page ebook. Just click the link or go to karltayloreducation.com.